today I had given the topic as journeys, and journeys can be literal meaning of journeys, as in people taking a trip, or journeys could be very metaphorical, where you're going into a journey of self-discovery, transformation, adventure, or it could be simply about the passage of time. It could be about phases in life that we are journeying through. Sometimes we also say that we are journeying through a course. So the word journey itself can have many, many connotations. So I thought that I would pick this up because it's also connected with nature. And since today is the World Environment Day, I have a poem here which is connected to journeys as well as to the environment. And I think all of us who have read Hobbit would connect with this very easily. So I'll start by reading this little poem by Tolkien, and then we will. The original version in Hobbit is now turned into a song. It's actually a song that one of the characters, Bilbo, sings in the last chapter, as well as somewhere in the beginning when he's going up on the rise of the hill, and he sees his home in the distance, and he says this. He puts it in a song. It's a poem which says, "Roads go ever, ever on, over rock and under tree, by caves where never sun has shone, by streams that never find the sea, over snow by winter sown, and through the merry flowers of June, over grass and over stone, and under mountains in the moon. Roads go ever, ever on, under cloud and under star, yet feet that wandering have gone turn at last to home afar. Eyes that fire and sword have seen, and horror in the halls of stone, look at last on meadows green and trees." So that's a small little portion of the four. There are four verses to this song. I've just read two of them, but it talks about how roads can go on and on. And there are so many other poems on journeys and on how it affects the life of people. So I chosen a few where some are about a journey of introspection. So my next poem is in fact going to be that, written by Mary Oliver, where she is introspecting herself um, in this poem. It's called The Journey. So she says, "One day you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life," each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do. So that's about how she goes through this entire journey of things being shattered in life, and how you gather everything up and then again set on the journey once more, collecting yourself, collecting your thoughts, your mind, making up, and recognizing, as she says, that this is your own path to walk on, your own journey to make, and how you give yourself courage and then resume your journey. So I particularly picked this up because it was all about going within yourself and talking about this is the metaphorical meaning of the word journey. And there's another last one that I would like to read is it's called Night Drive by Seamus Heaney. A fairly I would say a poet whose poems are quite complicated generally. But this is one of his simpler poems, and this is about a very physical journey that he is on in France, and he's addressing it to rest of his people who are in Italy. So he just talks about what he sees as he walks on the streets of France. It's called The Night Drive. The smells of ordinariness were new on the night drive through France. Rain and hay and woods on the air made warm drafts in the open car. Signposts whitened relentlessly. Montreal, Abbeville, Bues were promised, came and went, each place granting its name's fulfillment. A combine groaning its way late bled seeds across its work light. A forest fire smoldered out. One by one, small cafes shut. I thought of you continuously, 1,000 miles south, where Italy laid its loin to France on the darkened sphere. Your ordinariness was renewed there. So that's Seamus Heaney for you and his connection of life with a physical journey that he is undertaken in France. So that was what uh, his his entire thing was about, connecting whatever was going on in his mind with what he saw on the road that he traveled on. And he talks about a furnace, he talks about this the furnace groaning, or he talks about a combine that is groaning its way late, bled seeds across its work light, a forest fire smoldered out one by one, small cafes shut. So he's talking about what happens in the journey of a day as you walk on the streets. He's talking about what happens when things open up and then they shut, and then the next day comes, and the journey of this life goes on and on. And in the process of this life, in the process of this journey, he remembers people whom he's left behind in Italy. And then he's able to make a connection, and he's able to kind of connect the journey that he's physically undertaken with the journey of his own life and the connections he has in his life with the people of his in his life. So there are so many ways in which poets interpret their thoughts, interpret the emotions that they feel, and then they bring it out in expressions which they put in the form of a poem. So let me end by just simply quoting a line which says that poetry is when an emotion has found its thought and the thought has found words. So an emotion has found its thoughts and the thought has been expressed through words. That's what poetry is. So over to Mr. Ghosh, and he will continue with the technicalities that he wants to explain. Do you want to share that right away?
Put that.
Yeah. You just have to keep pressing this one.
Good evening, all of you. I was talking about the journey of art, an artist, how he starts his painting and goes through it. So in last 2 weeks, two sessions, I tried to explain uh, how they collect the subject, or if it comes to their head, and then how they elaborate, think, make that basic plan in their head, or sometime on the paper, and then they start executing the work. Now, after the subject is decided, once the subject is decided, then the second thing remains, the most important thing is the composition. How the composition is going to be on the paper. Actually, these rules, regulations were formed much, much later. It's not that there were rules and regulations and artists followed those rules, regulations, and started painting according to the rules. No, it was other way around. People were painting right from prehistorical days in the cave. Right from that time, they were painting. Quite late, the academies came up and they slowly started analyzing the paintings, and they found certain common things, that if this happens, it looks logical. If this happens, this looks illogical. This spoils or this enhances. So that's how slowly the rules are made. Now that became another pain in the neck for the artists. Very often, those who are trained artists, they get so bogged down with the rules, do's and don'ts, that the actual feeling and spontaneity suffers. So again, there is a fight to break away from the established rules and regulations. But my way of thinking is, at the training stage, one should practice so much that after a stage, you don't have to think of rules and regulations. By mistake also, you don't make a mistake. You don't have to be conscious all the time to do the right thing. As an English teacher, doesn't have to think of the spelling and the sentence construction and things. All that comes very, very spontaneously. Whatever he or she thinks can put on the paper. Same thing, once you are there, in other words, if I say technicalities are prerequisites, and most important thing is the thought, the feeling, the subject, etc., etc. Okay, now exact rules I am coming up. The most important and the first rule is your subject, whether it is going to be all right in a vertical shape, that's portrait format as they call it nowadays, or landscape format, that's horizontal shape. Sometimes, yes, they do it square also. And very often another thing happens. Particularly it happens with the mural painters, that you don't select the shape. The shape is there. You have to design it according to the shape. And you understand very well when I say if a child is painting, is drawing that his friends are playing basketball. Somebody is jumping up at the net to pot the ball, and there are two more boys or three more boys jumping up to block him. Paper has to be horizontal, you have to be vertical. It's a long painting. But again, if the space is horizontal, not that you can't do it, with a bit of thinking, the composition can be changed, which looks okay in a horizontal space also. But going back to the composition, one thing is absolutely necessary, that your painting, your subject fits in the paper. It shouldn't be too big that it's going out, or it shouldn't be too small that too much of leftover paper is there. Yes, leftover space, if that is meaningful, it is a different thing. But normal cases, your subject should be so, you have to select the size of the subject that it doesn't go out of the paper or touch the edges, at least the meaningful things that you are doing. Now, the painting which is in front of us, if we look at it, it's a very beautiful painting, but it's not a photograph that you can't do anything about it. This is what it is, so I have to do it that way. No, that pillar, which is probably a lighthouse in front of us, it's not complete. There was no need. He could have drawn it a little smaller, or composed it in such a way. Again, it's not camera that you can't do it. In painting, the advantage is, yes, you can place the things accordingly. So you have to have some space above the uppermost, the tip of that building. On the other hand, lower edge, if you look at it, the reflections of the three board is again half finished. Why? The entire drawing could have been a little small, or even you can juggle with the drawing at the time of drawing. I don't have to be exactly what it is there. I can make something so that it doesn't look as if it is cutting. So in painting, these rules nowadays is taken in photograph also. But in photograph, you can't help it. You have to help it in absolutely different way. Maybe sometime I'll talk about that. But in painting, it's very easy. You have to only draw it a little smaller or omit few things, and you can do that. So first point, as I said, is it should be completely in the paper or in the canvas. It can't be the head got. Nowadays, you can see everyone has a camera in his hand or her hand, and all the time they photograph. So often I see that the head is cut a little top part of it, or one side there is too much of space, one side there is too little space. These, one doesn't have to go and get trained. Your own aesthetic sense tells you. Your own you yourself can think of that, think that the head shouldn't get cut.
What happened? Something is wrong with this.
এটা দেখতে হবে। Yeah. Now there is another painting, same, it is in vertical form, and you can see the flowers are arranged in a vertical way, but you don't have to be an artist and a trained artist to see that the subject is rather big for the space. It's too crowded. The lower flower, some petal are touching. The other side, and the flower which is to our facing the right side, according to me or according to our rules, there should be a little more space on the right side. So leftover space doesn't seem to be all right. Two buds on top of the flower, they look very beautiful, but somehow it's not uh, coming into the painting. So it's actually spoiling the composition. If the buds were full and there was half an inch more space up there, it would look much, much better. So one thing very good, I like it, that's the solidity of composition, we call it. The painting is absolutely solid. Two flowers and three, four buds and leaves all together composed so beautifully. It looks one unit, one solid unit, and it's an advantage. There aren't too many. Rather, nowadays you see many artists who are doing that they take a shape and solid composition they make, which is an advantage, which shows that you understand the mechanism of composition.
Thank
you. Okay, today let's finish it here. If there is any question.
So let me invite uh, Jatin. Jatin wanted to talk about primitivism in music. Jatin, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. So, for today, I have chosen this topic, primitivism. So, by the way, what primitivism stands for? A belief in the value of what is simple and unsophisticated. Okay, expressed as primitive time or place or people of primitive society. And in art also, like the techniques and styles that were copied from the art of Asian, African, or Australian people, which were perceived as primitive in relation to the urban civilization of European countries. And today, even while studying about this topic, I also saw the paintings of Pablo Picasso in his African period. So, and apart from that, there is also a painter. His name is like Henry Rosu, and the particular painting name, The Sleeping Gypsy. So, all of these paintings were actually inspired by the primitive period also, and by the primitivism of these areas like Africa. One more thing that, like in the poetry, also you will see this kind of thing, and especially in the poetry of Mary Oliver's, when I was looking for this thing in the poetry. So the poetry also it emphasizes on the return of nature and primitive state of humanity, and also contrasting with perceived artificiality and corruption of civilization. So this is a kind of a painting that I've shared here first. You can take a clear look at it. Apart from that, the poem by the yeah the poem by the Mary Oliver. Its name is At Black River, which starts like all day it's dark, slick bronze soaks in a mossy place its teeth. a multitude set for the comedy that never comes. Its tail knobbed and shiny, with a heavyweight punch packed around the bone. In beautiful Florida, he is king of his own part of the Black River. So, like the theme, which explores the nature, the introspection, and the connection between the human experience and the natural world. And the same thing was done in the music also. And the composer I would like to discuss about is Stravinsky. And the particular piece that was composed by Stravinsky was The Rite of the Spring, where this concept was used. But right now, if we talk about primitivism in music, then we will need to think of the culture of these primitive areas. For example, actually, this piece was also inspired by the African culture, where we can actually, and in some movies also you might have seen, like in Tribes, the way the rhythms are used and how rhythmically enriched the music is. For example, when I was also studying my drums, there was a particular book I might have mentioned about that book, The Passport to Cuba, which was filled with the rhythms only. Like so many different types of rhythms were available: rumba, clave, and the other cascara. So when we talk about the enriched rhythmic music that resonates with the culture of a tribe, so I will be sharing my screen again, and you can take a clear look at this composition. The musician's name was Stravinsky, and the piece was The Rite of Spring.
Just put it.
Stravinsky.
Will
Yeah.
you just write it, Jatin? Because
Yeah.
even I
Yes, yes,
wanted
ma'am.
to ask you the same thing.
Yes, yes. I will write it in the chat
Yeah.
box.
That was a beautiful piece of music. And it really went with the theme that you were talking about. So let me end the session with this last one poem by, it's called Outward Bound by Helen Hunt Jackson. So the hour has come, strong hands the anchors raise. Friends stand and weep along the fading shore, in sudden fear lest we return no more, in sudden fancy that he safer stays who stays behind, that some new danger lay, new snares in each fresh path untrod before. Ah, foolish hearts! In fate's mysterious lore is written no such choice of plan and days. Each hour has its own peril and escape. In most familiar things, familiar shape, new danger comes without or sight or sound. No sea more foreign rolls than breaks each morn across our thresholds when the day is born. We sail at sunrise daily, outward bound. And all of us here who are gathered, the three of us, we I think I can speak for all of us and say, come one or come all, our journey goes on. We revel in our art, be it painting, music, or poetry. Thank you for joining, and good evening to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye
Thank you
bye.
so much, ma'am. Bye.